Hey, hi, and most importantly, hello. Welcome back. It is spooky season. Happy Halloween. Today we are going to be celebrating by slitting my throat. This is a Tinsley transfer. Tinsley transfers are pre-made prosthetics that are made to adhere within minutes. I use these a lot on set. They are a lifesaver, let me tell you. So I'm going to show you how you guys can apply this at home and make it look creepy and extra spooky and real. First things first, I'm going to address the obvious. Please do not come for me. I know that my hands are so dirty. I worked all day today. I was doing makeup for about 8 hours straight. I did an event for Tito's Vodka, actually, hence the bandana. They gave us cute little merch, too. It was a really good time. I got to make their staff spooky and icky, and the theme this year was vampires. So it was super cute, and I loved every minute of it. So that's why my hands are already dirty, okay? I promise I'm not just gross. But I figured they're already dirty, let's do something cool on myself. So first things first, we're going to prep the skin with 99% alcohol. You can take it a little bit on a cotton pad or however you want to. You really don't need a lot. I just take a tiny bit and I just prep and clean the area. That's gonna take away any dirt, any grime, any makeup, anything on the skin that you don't really want there. And you do this even if you're clean, even if you're not wearing makeup, because throughout the day we sweat, we get debris, or if you're like me, you've been around airbrush fumes all day, and that stuff goes into the air and gets on the skin. So just make sure you get it nice and clean. Again, doesn't need to be a lot, but just make sure that your area is nice and prepped. This is our best friend for the day. This is the large neck slice from the Tinsley transfers. These ones are my absolute favorite. I've used these so many times. And these work exactly like a temporary tattoo. This one is in the box, so I'm going to show you guys exactly how to prep it. And by the way, they have multiple versions. They have ones in this pack, or they have ones in the red pack. They're both just as good as the other. These ones are a little bit more expensive, and they have a little bit more big options like this, but both are the same, and they are both just as great. This is my daughter. Say hi, Chloe. She missed mama, so she gotta get some loving today. Look how pretty you look. So you're gonna take her out of her home. Now these ones are really nice because you're able to kind of grab from this section and pull them up. The other ones in the red casing, it is not that easy, but you do have to be very careful because these are sticky. So because they need to be able to adhere to the skin. So just try to be careful when you're taking them out. Try not to put pressure on this part of the box or on any of those because you will not be able to use your transfer. And I have done that many times and have regretted it. So in this box, it's going to come directly with instructions, which is really, really nice if you are unfamiliar with the process, but I'm the instructions today. Okay, so after you pull that up, pull the instructions out, there is going to be this plain white piece of paper-like material. So this little piece of paper is kind of like a shiny cardstock type of feel, but this is exactly where the transfer is going to stick. So once you're ready, you're going to carefully take the edge of this plastic and you are going to slowly peel it up. I say slowly because if you fold it down and it touches each other, again, it is very sticky. I know what this looks like. So you're gonna take its little best friend, shiny side up, and when you roll it, you are kind of gonna come at an angle. You're gonna lay it kind of flat and roll it down that way. And once you're done with that step, you are going to take your hands and swipe across, get rid of any air bubbles on the edges and things like that. And sometimes I'll run my hands over it a couple times. I always go all the way around the edges. This is just going to ensure that it's really flat and that you are going to get the crispiest edges on the transfer. Okay, so now I have it face down, upside down. This next part is optional, but this is what I like to do for every transfer. I'm going to take it here and I'm going to hold it up to the light backwards on the part where you can't see. And the reason I do this is because I can't show you, but I can see the outline of where the transfer sits, including the open gash. It doesn't have to be perfect. It does not have to be pretty. It just needs to give you a general size and shape of the wound, like that. And the reason that I do it this way is because when I put it against the skin, I'm going to see exactly the shape and the size about where it's going to sit, and that way I can place it where I want and not really have to eyeball it. You are then going to cut around the edge of it. Make sure you're avoiding that plastic outer rim. You want to keep that on there. And again, this part does not need to be perfect. So we have our rough cut. This is a pretty big piece. Again, this is why we draw this, because all of this area, that's my plastic. But because I have that there, I don't know how large the piece actually is, so now I'm gonna see how big it actually is when I lay it against the skin. Now, they're taking it back to childhood because this is just like applying a temporary tattoo. We've already cleansed the skin, we've already given myself a good canvas, so I'm just gonna move my hair all the way back, make sure there's no issues, nothing in the way. And then when you're ready, and only when you're ready, you are going to peel it. And you can kind of see here, this is how it's looking. This part is once again very sticky, so do not touch it directly, do not put it face down, do not put anything against it or it is stuck with you. Okay, so now that this is all trimmed up and ready to go, if you wanted to, you can come in and make it a little smaller if the area is a little large, which I might have to do because I have a tiny neck. But again, I'm going to be extremely careful and not touch the transfer. I got it to a size that I'm happy with. So now I'm going to press it onto my skin. I know I'm putting it on the neck, but even if you're doing this on yourself or somebody else, just be mindful of the amount of pressure you're putting because you do need to put a decent amount. And I'm just going to roll it on like that and push it on. Make sure that you are certain where you want this to sit because once it latches onto the skin, as you can see, it's not moving. You are married to it. There is no going back. So be very mindful of that. And now you're just gonna take paper towel, washcloth, whatever's better for you. You wanna get it really, really wet. And just like a temporary tattoo, you're gonna put that on there. And this is just regular water, nothing special. Okay, and you see how this is starting to become transparent, but there's still some patches here. With these, you wanna make sure that it is fully soaked. It won't come off the paper if it's not ready to be released, and that could create rough edges, it could mess with the transfer, and it just won't look very pretty. Apply water as you need to, and take your time. Okay, so this is pretty ready to go, but just take your time with it, because once it's ready, it'll let you know it's starting to lift, and you're just gonna slowly peel it back, just like you would with a temporary tattoo. If at any point some things are sticking, like I know this piece in the middle is kind of thick, so it might need a little bit more water, just lay the paper back down and apply more pressure and more water as you need. We're gonna go for it, let's see. Hi. Look how icky. Now, for some of these edges that are lifting a little bit down here, there's a couple things you could do. You could take some water and kind of push that in there. And then I'm gonna take a tiny bit of that 99% alcohol and I'm just gonna do some blending on some edges and I'm gonna take it out towards the direction that it's sitting. Just so we have a much smoother blend. These edges are pretty seamless, so I don't have to do too much work. There was a little bit of bubbling here, but that's fine because we are going to be playing with blood later, so we can use that to kind of hide a little bit. And since you guys are probably only doing this for Halloween, it's never that serious. It's Halloween. Just have fun. I'm honestly pretty happy with how the edges came out as is, so I don't really need to fix too much, in my opinion. Yeah, I'm ready to just color correct this. Okay, and the next to color correct for this one, I'm going to be using alcohol paints. Alcohol paints are alcohol-based paints that are only activated with alcohol, and they make it to be waterproof, and they last a very long time. This is definitely a more professional makeup artist tool. You gotta practice and get used to it a little bit, but let's have some fun with it. And this is what I do if I ever have to get actors ready in their costumes and I'm using alcohol paints. I could also use a cape, but paper towels are faster. I just throw them away after. I don't gotta worry about cleaning them, fixing it. I just take it right out and throw it away. So once again, I'm going in with my alcohol-based paints. I'm going in with this one that is a little bit more skin color. This is from Skin Illustrator. And I'm just kind of going to make a light wash of my color. I'm going to use kind of a mix of things, and I have an olive adjuster, which is wonderful because I happen to know that I have an olive undertone, so now I can get it a little more exact and not flat. I'm gonna take my chip brush, dip it in some alcohol, and start mixing these colors. Dip a little bit of that olive in there. think I'm happy with that so far. And when I do stuff like this, I like my alcohol brush to be decently wet, not soaked, but enough that it's not going to be such a harsh color. It's going to be a very light wash. I'm going to take it and do like a flecking motion like so. I'm just going to go all across the transfer. Makeup artist and color theory fun fact. This is already such a peachy type of undertone. So I went ahead and added a lot more of that olive adjuster than I initially thought, because it's kind of going to help mute down the redness in this transfer. Taking time to let the layer dry in between so I can see how it's really going to sit. And if you do take this method and decide to try alcohol paints, be careful with the fumes. I've been surrounded by them all day. I'm surrounded by them all the time. And it still gets to be a lot. Okay, so now it's getting to a better point. I initially just wanted to block down that coloring that was happening because it was just so pink. And in order for me to match it to my tone, I needed to get rid of that pink with the olive. And now I'm at a point that I'm happier with how it's looking. Okay, so now this is dry. I'm actually really liking the coloring, and the reason that I like it is because it brought down just a tiny bit more. I can kind of feel the makeup here, and I purposely went above and below a little bit to give it a little more seamless blend. And you can see that despite from little bubbles, it's hard to kind of see an edge on where some sides stop and where they start. So that is a good thing. That means you did a pretty good color match. And now we're going to take it the next step farther. And now I'm going in with my next alcohol palette, another Skin Illustrator. Leave her alone. This is my ride or die. I know she's ugly, but she has been with me through it all. I am literally working her to the grave. I actually used her today because you can see a little bit of the mess that was happening up here. So here's a fun little BTS of freshly used Skin Illustrator. So this is the really fun part, because now that we have established color, we've established placement, this is where we get to take this ugly inner part and just make it as gross and as icky as possible. First, I'm gonna come in with this color, which is a light mauve. It's gonna be like a fleshy pink, and I'm going to use that to do just that, make a fleshy inner pink area. Okay, so I'm just gonna do a wash all over this to start, and then when it comes to this gross inner area here, I'm gonna put it in there, but I want to really leave that area as bare as I can. And when you're using alcohol paint, you add your alcohol as needed. The more alcohol you use, the lighter the wash. The less alcohol you use, the more pigment you're gonna get. For this one, I am using a lot of alcohol because I just need a light wash of this color. From there, I'm gonna go in with my blood tone. That's how often I use this palette. It's completely colored and I know exactly what the name of the color is. So this color is Fresh Blood, and I'm going to use it to add some depth and definition around the parameters of the wound. The good thing about these is the job is mostly done for you. You just kind of get to pick and choose how crazy you really want to take it. When I'm applying these on set, I usually have like 20 minutes max to do this. That just happens to be the time that I get. And honestly, it's not a problem if the color fits the talent, but if they have my pigment or a different pigment other than the one that is in the box, the color matching does eat into the process, but I've kind of mastered how to knock it out. But it's nice to be able to take my time with this one. Now I'm using the same brush for my detail here, but make sure you are cleaning it off in between with alcohol so you're not letting things get muddy and gross and be all kinds of weird colors. This is an old beauty brush of mine. I'm literally just using an old Morphe brush with a slightly rounded tip. I will use that, or I will use something slightly more pinpointed and a little bit flat, something similar to this brush here. But this is my Delium glue brush, so I try not to use it for any details if I can help it. I do really like it, but I don't need it for this one. Now I'm going to go into the corners with Aged Blood. If you can't tell, he is about to retire. He is ready to go. He's done, but he is probably my favorite color. This is the tone of blood that's going to be a little bit more brown, and that's really, really going to help sink in these areas and just make it look nasty. So I'm going to focus that more towards the outer edge and any areas that are super deep, and towards the bottom of the transverse, since that is where a lot of blood would pill up and pile up and coagulate. I never get to do this on myself, so seeing it's such an open wound being painted and coming to life on you is like really crazy. And also a lot harder. I definitely prefer doing this on other people. Some areas I want it to sit heavier than others. I don't kind of want a fully cohesive look, so I'm going to kind of pick and choose places that I think should be darker and grosser. And that way, as you can see, there's a little bit of depth and a little bit more. If it's less flat. And so if it's one whole color, that's what kind of makes it look a little more cartoony. This is going to help it look a little more 3D and a little more realistic. And now I'm going to open up my neck so I can get the top. So under here, you can see I have a light coming from a little bit underneath me, and you can see how it's highlighting certain areas only that are a little bit deeper. And then even when I relax my neck, certain parts are sticking out more than others as a deeper set blood. And that's why I choose to do that, because in the light, that is how it's going to look. And now this part gets really dangerous, and I don't recommend doing it as a newbie. But if you are a pro, by all means, or if you're just feeling a little adventurous, go for it. I'm going to take black, and remember what I said about alcohol. The more you use, the lighter of a wash. Use so much alcohol, because I want such a light wash of this black. And the reason I want that is because just like this aged blood is going to give depth and make things look a little more deep, this is going to create a shadow, and that shadow is going to give the deepest parts of that wound. And when you add thick blood or a little light blood over it, it's really just going to make it look really deep and disgusting. Lightest wash imaginable, and I'm going to take it, honestly I kind of want it to be right here, here, into this part that I did here, and right at the outer corner. Slightly down here, because again, I don't need it to be fully symmetrical, I just need it to make sense. And here's a perfect example, because I want a little heavy-handed there. I do like it, but I just want it slightly less, so I'm going to take the brush cleaned with alcohol. And now it's less prominent. Okay, now once again, you can see some parts are now looking deeper than others, and they're looking a lot more heavy set in terms of blood when there hasn't even been any added. And I try to keep this as realistic as possible. I try to look within the wound and see what parts are naturally deeper, what parts sink a little bit more, because that's naturally how it would look. I have had to look at a lot of slit throats to create these. Don't recommend that. Protect yourself. All right, this is my favorite part, and this is either everyone's favorite or their least favorite. Once again, brush is cleaned out. So this part is my absolute favorite, and people tend to hate this. But I'm gonna go in with a little bit of this prime yellow here, and that is going to be the fatty part of the neck, which is gonna be this round circle here. Now this is disgusting. Ugh, cool. But I'm also gonna take it on some of these outer ugly parts here that are a little bumpy, just so I can create more of that fatty tissue look. I'm also gonna come in with a little bit of this golden ochre color for that detail and for the very, very center. And then if it's a little crazy, I'm going to go back in with that light mauve color and just kind of do a very light wash over it, just to dim it down a little, but make it look like a more natural fatty yellow. See what I mean? Okay, and now this is the best part, my favorite part of all time, blood. This is my bestie. This is the love of my life, Ben and I Thick Blood. Love this thing. Okay, so this is my big jar of thick blood that I use in my kit. I clearly have been putting her to work as well, but a little of this goes a very, very long way. Don't overdo it with this part. and I'm going to show you how. Okay, so I recommend taking a Q-tip or whatever brush you prefer if you're okay with the brush getting ruined. And you are just going to take tiny bits, tiny amounts, very little. And again, use some of that thick blood to place it at the thickest parts. I like to go really lightly with this just so it doesn't cover up all the paint that I did, but as you can see here where I added some of the black, it sits and adds a nice extra depth and darkness underneath that blood because it's creating a little bit of a shadow. The blood itself is quite thick, but this is actually a very, very thin layer that I'm using. So I have the thickest part up here and a thin layer here, but because of that black, it looks like one thick, nasty chunk. You don't want to completely cover up your paint job, you just want to emphasize it. This is my little CC cup. I'm literally using this much blood from what I've applied so far. It's very, very little is necessary. Now I know when people think about like horror movies and they think about gore, they think of lots and lots of blood, but honestly, the truth is that less is more when it comes to wounds. So remember that when you are applying. Just taking it across the top of it because this is really how I'm going to make it look like that neck was split open and cut down. And bring it up, and you can see it opens up a little bit more, and it just kind of helps it look like that's where the edges really sat. I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom here, and I'm honestly putting this slightly outside of the prosthetic, so that way I still have my coloring showing through, but it's a nice cute little fade there. Okay, now my extra favorite part. More blood. Now I use multiple different layers and levels of blood for the most part. My favorite and my go-to is the Red Drum Dark Red Drying Blood. I use this for just about everything. My bottle's a little broken right now, but that's okay. And then I also have this little thing of blood. There's no label on it because it's mine. I made it. So this is the Missy Special. This one is quite watery. It's not really good for doing a thick layer of blood, but this is the blood that I use mostly for my tubing and a little bit of coloring. So I'm going to take a tiny bit of Missy blood. This is what it's looking like on the Q-tip. And I'm going to put it on top and inside of this wound. Now, this one, as I said, is very watery, but I like it for this section specifically because I don't want it to be too over the top because, again, less is more. But it's just for my light underwash for that way when my other blood's dry, and that way we still have an active bleeding wound, but we're not losing this spot right here. And it's gonna start to leak on its own eventually the more blood that I add. Oh. But now we're gonna get gross, and we are going to add that nasty, gross colored blood that you're used to seeing. Okay, and now we have the Red Drum Thick Blood in this one, and I'm going to take light layers of that one, and this one is really, really great for leakage and for that deep, ugly blood color that you're used to seeing in the movies. I'm going to layer it here, and this blood is much thicker, and it will pill and bleed all on its own. Once I start doing more layers, it's just gonna kind of fall to gravity, and there we go. I'm gonna stop the flow a little bit early just because my shirt's going to cover most of that anyway, so there's no need to let it go rampant. And again, let gravity do a lot of the work for you. And I'm kind of doing a little bit of a rolling motion. I don't want it to be so perfect. So the funny thing about blood and makeup effects is everything needs to be intentional without looking intentional. And that is what I am doing here. And it's okay if it gets a bit on the outer edge because it would. You're bleeding. I'm gonna let gravity do its thing on this side too because it's looking a little too clean. There we go. Yummy. I'm gonna take a tiny bit of that thick blood I have left and place it in the center very lightly. I just want us to see how it's beating up on one side. That's perfect. I don't want it to be fully smack dab in the middle. I just want it to beat up and look like there's some chunks hanging out there. Are you guys having a good time? I am. Ew, did you guys see how that like beat it up right there? Gross. Great, and if you feel you've overdone it just a tiny bit, this is where you take your Q-tip and you just open up some of that coloring that you did. And that way it's still gonna be bloody, but you can still see a tiny bit of that yellow and pinkish undertone that I put here. And make it drip as much as you want, as crazy as you want. I said that less is more, but I'm not the Halloween costume police. Do whatever you want. But because I'm used to less being more, I'm happy with her. The only other thing I would recommend, and this is just for fun, take that chip brush, take your blood that is a little bit looser and runny, just very, very little. You're just gonna around the bottom edges. That's gonna give that slight "it leaked and bled everywhere" effect. And also make it look a little less flat. I've never flecked blood on myself either. This is so fun. What do you guys think? And this is the final look. I feel so pretty with my slit throat. It is very interesting doing it on myself. Again, most of the time I'm doing it on other people. So this is definitely an experience. It's really fun. It's really cute. As you can see, as the video has gone on, this edge has gotten a little thicker, which makes sense because we're constantly moving and shifting and talking. So stuff like that will happen. Honestly, when I use things like this in film and TV, it is usually for somebody who is just laying there, neck exposed, a little bit dead, or if I absolutely have to and I'm really on a budget, I have used stuff like this for blood gags, blood tubing, where it sprays. And that is quite literally just placed low enough that they can kind of hide it, and we'll do like a cheat action. That's a whole other video, but this is not really something that is going to sit and be still. This will definitely move with you. It will talk with you. Like you can see it like if I just go for it and I just like move my like icky, gross. But yeah, this thing is very thick. It is very uncomfortable, but honestly it's so cool. With that being said, thank you so much for watching. I hope you had as much fun watching me slit my own throat as I had fun doing it. It is 11:30 at night. I have been working all day. I have not had a single bite to eat. I'm gonna go eat and go to a drive-thru and scare people. Thank you so much for watching. Be bye, goodbye, and happy Halloween!